You want to know who some of next week's top waiver wire pickups will be before everybody else? Let's do it again. It's time to beat the breakout. Every week, consistently finding players that become hot waiver wire pickups weeks ahead of time. So, who will it be this time? Reminder, this is the perfect time to try Underdog Fantasy if you haven't yet. Just use promo code ENDGAME when you sign up, and you can take advantage of the new customer special this week. Lamar Jackson just needs 1 yard. Go higher on that pick. Combine it with any other pick you like, and that is a good way to triple your money. You've already doubled your money just from signing up because they're giving you a 100% deposit match up to $500 for a limited time. Now, you know the NFL trade deadline is usually not full of action, and this year was no different. No big name players got swapped, and really not much in terms of fantasy football relevance. There was one kind of under the radar move that maybe wasn't even noticed other than fan bases from these teams. Donovan Peoples-Jones went from the Cleveland Browns to the Detroit Lions. In the fantasy world, you might think this doesn't even matter. Peoples-Jones didn't even have 100 yards total on the season, was barely used in this Cleveland offense, which is why they let him go for just a 6th round pick. It's really odd considering that last year, he was one of their more valuable offensive players, had 897 yards, and looked really good at times. It's hard to say what changed or why, but either way, he gets a fresh start. He's in Detroit. This is obviously an upgrade for him. And so you have to wonder, how is he going to be used and why did they trade for him? Let's start by setting some realistic expectations here. So first of all, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a target hog, somebody who's clearly going to be the number one target there no matter what. Sam Laporta, really athletic, good receiver at tight end. He's going to be technically the number 2 guy there. And then you have some question marks. Now, you know they have Jameson Williams, former first-round pick. Does this trade mean anything for him? I think it might. Now, the real reason that Detroit traded for DPJ is for depth because Marvin Jones, you might have heard, stepped away from football mid-season. He really wasn't part of this offense. Apparently had some family reasons, so he is just not on the team anymore. They needed somebody else. DPJ is versatile. He can play in special teams as a return man and, of course, play the vertical threat as a receiver. But when you dig deeper and look at the numbers, but also think about the comments that were made in terms of why they acquired Donovan Peoples-Jones, really have to wonder if there might be a bigger role in store for him. Both Dan Campbell and GM Brad Holmes kept using the word fit. They're saying he just fits in. He's a good fit. He fits the system. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could fit in. First of all, they're a team that likes to throw. Peoples-Jones has shown he can go vertical. That's one of the ways that he's used at receiver the most. In his 4 years with Cleveland, he averages 15.7 yards per reception. He's 6'2", he's got some length, and he's got speed. Behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and then Jameson Williams, you know, they have Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond. And that's kind of it. I mean, there's definitely a place for Peoples-Jones in this passing offense. Being the 5th receiver on any NFL team doesn't make you fantasy relevant. But let me get back to Jameson Williams. I have 0 Jameson Williams, and since he's come into the league, I have almost 20 fantasy teams that I manage, and a lot of them are dynasty. I have never had Jameson Williams. I'm just telling you, at this point, we have seen hardly anything to show that he's going to be a viable threat in the NFL. Right now, he's averaging 1.2 yards per route run. That's the same this year as Michael Gallup. It's less than guys like Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants offense. This guy got off his suspension early. He's been on that team. He's been healthy this year. There's really no excuses anymore. He just hasn't produced. So maybe I'm reading between the lines a little too much, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see DPJ getting more targets than Jameson Williams down the stretch. Goff is playing really well. This whole offense looks really good. Ben Johnson seems to be a mastermind at offensive coordinator. So yeah, I think they traded for him for a reason more than just depth. Now let's look at the flip side of this trade, and an obvious candidate to step up is in Cleveland, Cedric Tillman. They drafted Tillman in the 3rd round, a little higher than some people expected. You got to think they have plans to use him, and yet they haven't used him, just like they didn't use DPJ. Here's a quick run through of Tillman's highlights from this rookie season. That's it. 1 catch, 5 yards. And the previous 2 weeks, Tillman has been a healthy inactive. That's definitely worrisome. But again, you figure with this trade, they're clearing the path. Somebody's got to fill in, at least for the snap share, because Donovan Peoples-Jones, despite only having 8 catches this season, he was on the field 83% of the time. He was always out there running routes, even if the quarterbacks never targeted him. Tillman is going to have to see the field. Now, Tillman did not put up nearly the numbers of his teammate Jalen Hyatt at Tennessee the last couple of years, partly because of injuries. But this guy is just as athletic, maybe even more so. In fact, he had the 7th highest athleticism score from this wide receiver class, which is why he was drafted in the 3rd round. He's 6'3", 213, has a speed score in the 79th percentile. He's got all the tools you look for in a wideout. He just needs the experience. If the Browns do the obvious, sensible thing and actually let him get on the field and work into this offense, we could see some big plays here. Now, again, this is more of a long-term stash. It's going to take some time, but you've got to think Cleveland, they need to do something to generate offense. Deshaun Watson looks like he might be back to playing this week. Don't know if that's really even a good thing at this point, but you've got to think it's their best shot to do something in the passing game. So while Tillman is clearly a better long-term play in dynasty leagues, a stash or a buy low in that sense, in a redraft league, in a deep enough league, maybe worth a shot. But in the short term, there actually might be a different Cleveland receiver who produces instead. I'm talking about 11-year NFL veteran Marquise Goodwin. Goodwin, another guy who's barely been used this year, only 3 catches for 10 yards. But he's been seeing the field more. He's definitely going to see the field more now, DPJ gone. This is a guy, you know what he can do. He can fly. At one point considered the fastest man in the NFL. He only has 9 targets this year, but on those targets, he has a 24.6 average depth of target, which is number 1 among all receivers. He's going to run deep, and they're going to chuck it to him. He was productive in spurts last year for Seattle, wound up with 387 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a couple of big games, had a couple of down games, had some injuries. This is kind of what you're getting from Goodwin at this point in his career. Well, look, half of the season's already done. We don't need a full season of production. We're looking for a guy who can give us a couple of big games. Remember at one point back in 2017, he almost went for 1,000 yards in the season with San Francisco. If Tillman doesn't hack it, Goodwin is the vertical threat here. I mean, this is a guy, again, you're looking for that home run. This is kind of a boom bust type of streamer. There's still buys going on. There's still some hope for this offense. Goodwin is an intriguing flex play. Now, the other big change this week wasn't a trade. It was the firing of Josh McDaniels and the GM for the Raiders, cleaning house here, and the benching of quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, and offensive coordinator got fired. It's a new era for sure. With all that said, all the newness here, I can only hope that this means that finally they will free Zeus. That's right, Zamir White has been biding his time, waiting just to get on the field. He's been criminally underused, just part of the reason why McDaniel should have been fired a long time ago. This offense was so one-dimensional, so predictable, so stale. They're going to shake things up, right? And let's not forget, Josh Jacobs has not been good this year. Sure, he's been productive in fantasy just through sheer volume, but he's averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Too much wear and tear based on last year's overusage. He's not getting it done. They need someone to keep him fresh. They need a change of pace. They need something different. They need Zamir White. It's also worth noting that Josh Jacobs may not be around next year. Why don't they see what Zamir White can do for them and possibly be their lead back next year? For those who don't remember, Zamir White, former Georgia Bulldog, didn't put up huge numbers in college because that team was so talented. They had to take turns. But this guy runs a 4.4 40, has supreme athleticism. He's a bruising running back, not a huge guy. He's got speed, he's got power, he can do it all. He just hasn't been given the chance. Maybe it's just that I want this to happen, but I will say now there's hope. Maybe this offense becomes a little bit more diverse. Maybe Jacobs' workload gets a little bit reduced. Zamir White, there's no reason not to use him at this point. So I would stash him if you're in search of running back help for sure, and see if he actually can produce something. And then if you're looking for an opportunistic flyer, well, let's go to New England and look at their receiving core. No, I'm not going to talk about Demario Douglas. I already did that weeks ago. I talked about Pop Douglas back at the beginning of the season as an interesting stash. Talked about him again a couple of weeks ago, and now everybody's picking him up. But we can keep looking because, look, if Douglas is the number 1 guy there, look, Devontae Parker is hurt, and he's still Devontae Parker. Juju, Kendrick Bourne out for the season. They're going to need more than just one receiver. Bill O'Brien, when asked, he said the next guy has to step up and fill that role. It'll probably be several guys. That means it's basically going to be on-field tryouts there. And so are they going to go with the tried and true and The ones that they already know aren't that good? No, this is a chance for a guy like Kayshon Boutte to step up. Now you might remember back in week 1, he was on the field quite a bit. He even got 4 targets. Just didn't catch any. The most memorable was the one toward the very end of the game. Had a chance to make a sideline catch, couldn't keep the second toe in bounds, and I guess that was enough for Bill Belichick to throw him in the doghouse. Very strange situation here, how a guy goes from being one of the primary receivers to not playing at all the next several weeks, but that's the case. Well, now they might need him. Look, I will say before the season, I was kind of intrigued by Tyquan Thornton. He just can't stay healthy, and that's the problem. Always injured, and he can't work his way back into the rotation. At least with Boutte, we've seen that he can play, and maybe they'll give him another shot. If so, he's got intriguing upside. Really, the issue with him is it was some character concerns, is why he fell so low in the NFL draft, saying that maybe he was uncoachable, attitude. Bill O'Brien says, no, he's coachable. He's been working hard, trying to get on the field. Just takes a little bit of time. Well, the time might be now. Well, it's still hard to get fired up about anybody in the Pats offense at all. Like, they're going to need to throw the ball. They're going to need someone to throw it to. There's not a lot of options there. I still like Pop Douglas the best. But, again, you're in a deep league. You're looking for upside. He's the kind of guy, Boutte is the one that could make some big plays. And when the alternative is Jalen Reagor, I'll lean towards the rookie. Those are the players to stash now before the competition does. And don't worry, we got you covered for start, sit, trade, waiver wire, everything you need to win. Check out this week's playlist.